sweet little things. Welcome to another new little segment on my channel, Sombra Game Reviews. Yeah, this is kind of turning into a gaming channel at this point, but you know what? I like doing it, and it's my channel. I'll do what I want. Today, we're taking a look at the well-anticipated remake of Silent Hill 2, or well-hated depending on your point of view, but we'll get to that later. This, of course, is a remake of the classic Silent Hill 2, originally made by a team of Japanese developers commonly known as Team Silent by fans and released on PlayStation 2, Xbox, along with the director's cut on PC with some extra areas to explore. For many, it's considered one of the best horror games of all time, making it an extra risky decision for Konami to come back and jump on the remake train. This version is developed by Bloober Team, who you may know for creating Layers of Fear and its sequel, along with Observer, that new Blair Witch game, and The Medium. I'm personally not surprised that they were chosen, given they specialize in psychological horror with amazing visuals, and they've pretty much already been trying to remake Silent Hill 2 anyway for the past several years, so it fits. Just as a warning, by the way, this video possibly contains spoilers. If you haven't played the original yet and are planning on doing so, you might want to wait before watching. Anyway, let's begin. So keep in mind, I played through this game on normal combat difficulty and hard puzzle difficulty, and I haven't started a New Game Plus run yet. Overall, I think this is a great game, and a fantastic update to the original. And I say that as someone who grew up playing the original when I was a kid. I never thought it needed a remake, and I was kind of skeptical when it was announced, but boy was I wrong. It updates things that definitely needed updating, and it brings what's at this point a 23-year-old game to the modern age. Cannot believe it's that old, I hate hearing that. It does have some flaws, which I'll be getting to, but the rest of the experience more than makes up for it. The game starts with our protagonist, James Sunderland, in the bathroom of a rest area, doing some self-reflection before venturing into the ghost town of Silent Hill to find his wife, Mary. Despite passing away from a disease 3 years ago, he's received a letter from her saying she's waiting for him there. This is the main plot of the game, searching through a mysterious haunted town full of monsters for James's wife. And aside from just the disturbing figures lurking in the fog or creeping in the darkness, the town itself seems to be alive, shifting and transforming itself from a desolate, foggy wasteland to a dark, nightmarish dimension of rust and metal. Along the way, James will run into a number of other characters, all of whom were called to Silent Hill for their own reasons. There's Angela, a shy, nervous young girl who seems to be hiding a horrible secret. Eddie, an insecure young man with a big appetite. A young girl who seems to know both James and Mary. And to accompany James later is Maria, a flirtatious woman with a striking resemblance to his wife. They're all about the same as they were in the original, except for James. He's a stick in the mud. In the original, he had some personality, but here it's like 24/7 brooding. You don't know what he's gone through, okay? The plot is pretty much the same as the original with no real changes. There are some extra scenes with some of the characters which I liked, including some extra folklore to add to the town's mythology and further immerse you into the world. It does a decent job of building up to the famous twist at the end that everyone likely knows at this point, but I will still keep quiet about just in case. The dialogue is mostly the same with some minor changes, although a couple of iconic lines are missing. The actors all do a good job with their roles, no complaints there, but the facial animations are kind of awkward a lot of the time, which can sometimes make the cutscenes feel strange in their delivery. The exception to this is James, whose voice and animations are on point the entire time. Most of the backstory in this game, just like the original, is told through notes found throughout the environment. However, it's been updated to the new object examining and page flipping mechanic that's in games now, rather than the old scrolling through text over a pre-rendered image that was in the original. A lot of them are easy to miss, and often in completely optional areas on the map, which makes it easy to miss out on some of the lore if you're not searching through every nook and cranny during the game. The flavor text of the original is sadly missing as well. In the original, you could interact with the environment, and James would comment on it. So for instance, you could look at a dirty toilet, and James would go, "It really stinks." Or you could look at a bookshelf, and he would say, "I remember some of these books, but I don't feel like reading right now." I do wish that was still here, but it's gone. Graphics-wise, this game looks absolutely spectacular. 10 out of 10 on visuals alone. As expected from Bloober Team, the art direction is phenomenal, and it manages to be totally faithful to the original while showing just what modern graphics are capable of. I was legitimately blown away during many points while playing this. Everything is highly detailed, every shot a macabre masterpiece, every character lifelike. The downside to this though is on PC at least it's not as optimized as it could be. I played it a day before launch and there are some pretty big frame rate issues. Now granted, I don't have the most modern PC, my hardware is about 4 years old at this point. I have an RTX 2080 and an Intel i9 processor, but I've been able to play other new games pretty well, so I don't consider that too much of an excuse. I also suspected a memory leak, as the frame rate would get worse the longer I played until I restarted. I ended up having to turn all the settings down to medium, which I never have to do. But to be fair, the game still looked mostly the same, which kinda has me wondering if the epic setting is for 8K displays. There's also been some controversy about the in-game models, especially Pyramid Head, being way too heavy on polygons for a game. Almost like they just 3D scanned a real object and put it in the game without optimizing it. Having to load and play models with heavy polys like that can cause some real performance issues, so that needs to be fixed. Now the first thing you're going to notice is that this game is a lot longer than the original. I think the original was something like 6 or 7 hours at most, if I recall, while this one is more like 16 hours. My own playthrough was 17 hours. This is actually welcome for the most part. I liked seeing certain areas and ideas be expanded on, and I wanted more content for my money. In some areas though, it felt bloated or needlessly dragged out. I found myself 1 or 2 times thinking, am I seriously still in this area? And there was one section that went from being a quick bit of item hunting to an hour or so of skirmishing, which felt totally unnecessary. The gameplay is pretty solid for the most part, taking a lot of notes from the recent Resident Evil remakes from Capcom. So much in fact, that it's almost like they copied their homework, but in a good way. The main gameplay loop, just like in those games, is exploring set locations and unlocking new areas while fighting monsters, collecting loot, clearing rooms, and solving puzzles, with a healthy dose of backtracking. There are 5 main locations in the game, not including all the town exploration sequences. There's an apartment complex and hospital, along with their Nightmare Otherworld versions, a prison, a labyrinth, and a hotel. They typically have some kind of central puzzle to solve or door to unlock, and they usually require 3 separate key items that you have to find across each map. The combat is decent, albeit flawed. It is satisfying to beat up the monsters with the wooden plank and metal pipe you find in the game, and stomp on them when they hit the ground. But it's more about button mashing and dodging than about strategy or combos. There's also a lot of gunplay using a pistol, shotgun, and rifle. This was my preferred way of fighting, as it felt a lot smarter to take on the enemies at a distance. The game is incredibly stingy about ammo pickups though, often only giving 1 or 2 rounds at a time, creating an artificial scarcity. Maybe it's different on other difficulties, or maybe I missed some things, but that was my experience. The hit detection is also pretty bad. I often would have my shots quote-unquote miss, even though I hit them, just because I wasn't perfectly precise. This game also has a lot of stun locking, which I found annoying. Basically, every time you get hit, your controls are disabled for a second or two, which opens you up to be hit even more. And there are also some enemies that have a move that only stuns you, that's the only purpose, which was additionally annoying. The controls aren't as responsive as they need to be, and there's a sort of delay you have to wait for before your input is registered, which will leave you mashing the reload button because it didn't do anything the first time you hit the button. The game has 5 boss battles along with a few mini-bosses, each of which are expand versions of the original ones. I liked them all except for one, which to me was actually downright bad. Incoming rant. I hated this one boss, and not in a good way. In the original game, you fought him in a single room and just shot him with the rifle a few times and he died. In this one though, they turned him into an absolute bullet sponge that you have to fight over and over and over, right in the middle of one of the most amazing otherworld environments I have ever seen in any Silent Hill game. You have to deal with him running around, stalking you, and popping out repeatedly to soak up your ammo. He refused to die, and they did it way too many times. By the end, I was just irritated, literally shouting, "Die, die, die, die!" And it sucks because it was in such an amazing environment visually, but now all I can think of is that horrible boss. I think they should have had you explore the environment in peace, then at the end the boss comes out and you fight him in a single area. He can still be a bullet sponge, but at least you only have to kill him once. Now I played the game with hard puzzle mode, so for me I struggled a bit with the puzzles. Half the game is about solving them. They aren't exactly the same ones as the original. but they do still keep the spirit of them. For the most part, they're fun and challenging, but some were convoluted enough that I just started kind of guessing and brute forcing my way through. Like I said though, I had it in hard mode, so my experience was different. In terms of collectibles, there are strange photos scattered throughout the game, and you often have to go off the main path to find them. As far as I know, it just unlocks an achievement though, and I'm not aware of any extra content. There are also some Easter eggs in certain areas to find referencing the original game. There's also another sort of collectible series calling back directly to the original game, where you can find exact recreations of set pieces, puzzles, or objects from that game. And of course, Bloober Team couldn't help themselves. There is one room where you go in, the door locks behind you, someone's pounding on the door, you wait it out, the door opens again, and no one was there. They just couldn't help themselves there. They also couldn't help but include some modern horror tropes, such as a forced, unarmed stealth section playing hide and seek with monsters and being chased by invincible enemies. Now granted, these were sort of in the original game, but it was done very differently. In the original, the stealth section was much quicker and you could just run past the monsters and not be in much danger. Here, it's more like a modern horror game, having to sneak around tougher monsters that can easily kill you if spotted. If that's your thing, you might like it, but I didn't. The music in this game is fantastic. The famed composer of the original series, Akira Yamaoka, returns once again. While he didn't do the sound design this time, as he did in the previous series, he did work on the music for the game, creating modern revamps of the original score, along with some new tracks. It's all perfectly pitched, and when combined with Bloober Team's atmosphere and visuals, it's a match made in heaven. The sound design is also fantastic. They did their best to match the style of sound in the original, and it's highly immersive. Things sound creepy when they need to, the environments sound exactly how you'd expect. You got the radio freaking out when monsters are nearby, and of course you can always hear things creeping around in the distance, leaving you always wondering if there's something coming. There was even one instance of a dark outdoor area that had sounds of footsteps running around me, and I kept thinking I was about to fight something. That is mean. The only complaint I have is there's too much dynamic range. There is a night mode setting that brings it down, but even with it turned on, my speakers exploded whenever I got into combat, especially during boss fights, and there's no setting to change this. I played this game a day before release, and it was pretty polished. I didn't run into any bugs at all, outside of one hard crash and some performance issues. I have heard of others running into bugs that teleported them through walls and broke the game, but I never ran into it myself. And now it's time for everyone's favorite part, the online controversies. Yeah, people had all kinds of different reactions when this game was announced, with many groaning and saying, another remake? We don't need another remake. This game doesn't need to be remade, and pretty much concluding that it would suck. And then as more footage was revealed, people became more hopeful, and now it currently has overwhelmingly positive reviews on Steam and various gaming outlets. But that wasn't enough to convince some curmudgeons to let go of their seeming hatred of the remake and move on. They hated it so much, in fact, that many began to actually vandalize the game's Wikipedia page, saying that it was the worst game ever made, a soulless cash grab, universally panned and unneeded. All untrue. There was so much of it that the page was actually locked, and at the time of this review, it's still locked. Come on, people. The original isn't going anywhere, alright? Just go play it if you prefer it. And then we got another very familiar brand of hate towards the game, the so-called anti-woke crowd, once again complaining whenever a female character in a game isn't a flirtatious, scantily clad babe with big, bouncing boobles. They once again called the female characters in this game ugly, saying that Angela has a quote-unquote man face and that Maria has a different outfit that doesn't show her belly. Totally woke, guys. Totally not an outfit from the original game's concept art, guys.
Porn can be found on the internet!
Can I just ask, why does anyone care that the teenage abuse victim isn't a bombshell? My response to this total nothing burger is, who cares? They all look totally fine to me, and I had no issue with the characters' designs. So, anyway, final conclusion. This is a superb send-up to the original Silent Hill 2, and in my opinion, it's the new best game in the series, even better than the original. It does have a number of flaws, but none of them are enough to take away from the experience in a meaningful way. Solid gameplay, amazing sound and visuals, and a story just as thrilling as ever. My rating for this game is a 9 out of 10. I can't wait to play this game again in a New Game Plus run and see what's in store. And if Konami is jumping on the remake train, I'm eager to see how Bloober Team would handle a remake of Silent Hill 1 and 3. Maybe 4? Who knows? Anyway, thanks for listening. And if you need me, I'll be at Heaven's Night having a drink. Until next time.